Hi, my name is Kevin Zeese. I'm with the Baltimore City Green Party. I'm also co-director of Popular Resistance, which works on a wide range of movement issues. This is the second in a series of Facebook Live interviews that the Baltimore City Greens have done. The first one 2 weeks ago was on the education crisis in Baltimore. We have a $130 million budget deficit, which would cost 1,000 people their jobs, all educators, and that will be terrible not only for the schools and the students, but for those families and those communities. And so we're still working on trying to deal with that issue with the whole coalition of people. So check out the Baltimore City Greens on that. Today we're going to have another discussion about schools. This one's going to be about upper level schools, colleges and universities. And I have two really great guests here with me today to discuss this. DeJuan Patterson on the far left, who's a Bowie State graduate, and who has both a master's and a bachelor's degree, and in public policy is his master's. Rashad Staton.
Yes.
I got your name right?
Yes, sir.
Oh my God, I did it right the second time.
Thank you much.
All right. I got it wrong the first time. That's just an inside joke. All right. He's a graduate of Morgan State in 2014, and he was the former SGA vice president. And I tell you, I met both these people. Well, I more observed both of these folks at a rally focused on historic black colleges and universities, HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, because there's a big case going on that very few people have heard about. It's probably the largest education race case that's going on since Brown v. Board of Education, and very few people have heard about it. I was very lucky to be turned on to the issue by Doc Cheatham, who's active with the NAACP in both the city and the state. And he told me about this, and we started to look at it. We were amazed about this case. It's been going on really since the 70s. That's when the conflicts began. But the case itself was filed in 2006. 2013, they won the verdict on that in fact they had been discriminated against, and we'll get into those details in a second. And now what we're in is the final stage of that, which is how they're going to deal with the damages that were done to the four historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, in Maryland. Two of them in Baltimore City, one in Eastern Shore, and one down in Bowie. And we'll see how that turns out. But there's more issues to talk about, because the issues of what's the legislature going to do to appropriate funds to make up for this historic act of really racism. What's the state going to do about appealing? Our view is they shouldn't appeal. They should start to resolve this problem. This case is going on for way too long. As I said, it started in 2006, and it's a case that needs to be resolved, and the discrimination needs to be corrected. And how it's corrected is, we'll get a good clue of that from the judge when she issues her decision. It's a federal court judge when she issues her decision on how to correct the damages. And so we're going to talk tonight about not just this issue. We're going to talk about HBCUs, why they're important, what their impact is, and why we need to continue to talk about Annapolis and the courts, student activism, and what we can all do to help to resolve this. Really, I'd say it's a crisis in the treatment of HBCUs. Let me start with DeJuan. DeJuan, why don't you tell me, first off, why you chose to go to an HBCU? And I'll be asking you the same questions, so you prepare.
Sure. Right, you got the advantage right now. Great question. The reason I went to HBCU, at the time, I didn't really have a clear understanding of what HBCU was, but I understood some of the characteristics of the HBCU that I attended, which is Bowie State University. I was accepted into every university I applied to across and I didn't want to go too far away from Baltimore, being as though it was my first time being away from my family. And many of my family members never attended college, and they rarely ever leave Baltimore. So it was really important for me to attend somewhere close. And since I'm such a family-oriented person, real close-knit family, I felt like I had to go to a university with a small population. It gives me a real community feel. And while attending Bowie State University, similar to other HBCUs, it gives you a close-knit family environment. And it builds a level of pride and camaraderie, like these great things that once you get there, you can feel the level of energy. Attending Bowie State University, it was a spin for me because I had a personal experience going into my senior year of high school, where I was robbed and nearly shot in my head, nearly fatal for me. And I had to go to a place for me that made my family feel secure and at peace. So attending HBCU gave me that safe haven where I could feel comfortable. I had that family support that I was missing.
And Bowie has that kind of feel.
Yes,
it does.
Bowie had that real nice, close-knit family. The population small, and I would say being a big fish in a small pond, and you establish the life skills that's needed to survive, and which is relationship building. And I learned that at Bowie State University, and Rashad would tell you even more, is a sense of family at Historical Black College University. And once you go there, you see that there are different type of black people, different type of experiences there. And you see that just because we may all look alike, we have different experiences and we're different in a great way. So it shows you different things and that family structure.
What do you mean by that? What give me some idea what you mean by different?
Our life experiences are different. We come from different social classes, different rural, suburban, family structure, education level. Even sometimes they may have been language barriers. Coming from Baltimore, they say we have this Southern accent and terminology that we use. So some students come there and they need an interpreter for Baltimore. Like, what's the slang and what's the, not even the slang, what's the language that you guys use? Because you guys are a northern city, but you have like southern roots. So that's some of the things that's interesting. So you get to see how different people are at the HBCUs. And once you leave there, you realize how much those HBCUs have prepared you, because we have produced the top executive force, the most small business owners, the educators. So whenever you see top talent, they normally come from the HBCU. So you can see the production of the talented people that come there. And for some people, they think that just because it's historical black, that it was exclusive. No.
That's a surprise to a lot of people.
Yeah, and Bowie had one of
in fact, there's a desire to integrate more. And that's what this case is about.
Exactly. And Bowie had, before, when we talk more into it, before the duplication of programs happened, Bowie had one of the highest ratio of non-black students, white students inside the university.
Interesting.
So that's really interesting.
So let's hear from you. You did Morgan, which is in Baltimore.
Yes.
And so why did you choose HBCU? And how was your experience?
Well, my story is probably a little bit similar to the one as well, but my contrast was I knew I wanted to go. I initially had interest of going to a school outside of the state of Maryland. I wanted to see something larger than Baltimore. Growing up my entire life in West Baltimore, I wanted to see something different. I wanted to expand myself, but also being mindful of the cost of education as well. So I had to deal with that one. So my two obstacles were how to get a free education out of state, and I applied to 10 colleges, got accepted 8 out of the 10. All was majority HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities.
You applied to 10 all HBCUs?
Majority, yes.
Wow, that's
I think
interesting.
7 out of 10 were historically black colleges and universities. Because my family, I'm one of the few first generations in my family to go to a college. My old cousin went to Frostburg University, and I was able to visit there, and it just the culture in itself didn't match me. But I was able to visit on college tours with Upward Bound and College Bound Foundation. I visited other colleges and campuses as a high school student, and those that stuck out to me naturally and that I was keen to were historically black colleges. Just to visit. So, and I used to see certain schools doing the Battle of the Bands on TV and things of that sort, growing up and watching certain shows that promoted historically black colleges with their paraphernalia or imageries that were in the background of like a show, the Cosby's, the Steve Harvey shows, the Living Colors and things of that sort. I was exposed to those. They were things that I was used to, but also I wanted that same feel of being in a home.
So you get that at Morgan? How did Morgan
Yes,
feel?
as a family, as a school. I didn't want to, when I was researching schools, I didn't want to become a number within a classroom, and being mindful that
Great point.
that I was already a black man going into higher education, that I will already be a number.
Right.
So why would I put myself within a larger box within the box itself? So I wanted to be amongst peers. So I wanted to learn that, like DeJuan said, that us as a people, we're not all homogenous in one. That we're very different as African Americans or black people generally. And that's what I gained from Morgan. So once I got to Morgan, I actually applied for Morgan, was accepted, and I went to Morgan for 5 years, all in a free ride, because I applied for certain outside academic scholarships that allowed me to go to school for free. But the thing was, what I was searching for outside institutions is what I gained at Morgan. That experience of being outside. I lived on campus all 5 years, off campus. I lived outside of my home and lived on campus for 3 out of the 5 years. I was an undergraduate student. And that gave me the feel of living outside of Baltimore. Right. The culture at Morgan State being that it has so many different students that are admitted from different parts of the country and even outside of the country, that the culture there is not Baltimore itself. You have a large majority of an influence on the New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Right.
Down south schools, down southern states such as Florida and things of that sort, that the Baltimore culture itself often succumbs to whatever else is there. So even on the Morgan's campus, others had to adapt, and we had to adapt to the Baltimore culture of showing them what Baltimore stands for, how certain cultures and linguistics and styles and rhetoric that we use stands out to most that they wouldn't normally be exposed to. So even at home in Baltimore on Morgan's campus, you felt as though an outsider.
Oh, interesting.
The out-of-state experience.
So Baltimore has that much like of a different personality to people.
Yes.
That is really interesting.
Yes.
And I don't realize that.
I think I didn't realize it much until going to college or things of that sort.
Likewise.
It was that you hear these other counties, Prince George's counties, Anne Arundel, things of that sort in schools. But if you're from Baltimore, especially being an inner city black youth from Baltimore, where often Baltimore is this unknowingly very segregated town.
No question about that. Then we know the white L.
Right.
Folks who don't know, there's a white L down Baltimore where the wealthy whites live, and then the east and west is pretty much ignored.
Right.
And growing up in
no developers allowed.
Banks, food.
So it was not until I got to college that I started to submerge myself into the activities, the organizations, and actually becoming more of a people's person into leadership, that I learned that we have something that's very unique, but we also have to be encompassed and be receptive to every other culture as well that can make us a greater people.
So let me ask you this. HBCUs have a great history. You know, after the Civil War got started, but really got started again in the early part of the 20th century in a big way. There's something like 207, I think, HBCUs now, which is, people don't realize it's still a pretty big movement.
Yeah.
And probably people don't realize that, at least in Maryland, I don't know if this is true everywhere, HBCUs are part of the state system.
Yeah.
They're part, like any other state university, college park or whatever. They're part of the state system. They're funded, by state budgets and other alumni and such, and tuition like everybody else. So with that, if it's becoming so much like another state school, what's their role in the future? What do you see for HBCUs? Why are they important?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but this ties into the current Secretary of Education comment of why HBCUs were established in the beginning. She referenced the point.
Oh yeah, the votes.
Yeah.
Oh man, she's been in that.
Yes. For some of the viewers that's watching, the Secretary of Education votes, like the comment that she made was HBCUs were pioneers of education student choice.
Oh my God.
And that's completely false. Yeah. Because HBCUs were created because we were locked out of education altogether.
Right.
So we had to partner up with allies to help establish institutions that were capable and willing to educate black people. So that's why we have this historical black.
HBCUs were a response to Jim Crow.
Right.
You couldn't go to school in the white schools.
Right. Right.
You know, so the black community and a few philanthropists came together and created HBCUs.
Exactly. And so that ties into why HBCUs are important and why they're important today.
Yeah.
We're currently still in a real segregated time.
Oh my God.
And a lot
Sure.
of people do not like to address it. We have lived in such a segregated time, and some people, once Barack Obama, or former President Barack Obama was elected, there was this notion that we were post-racist.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so we're no longer concerned with race.
Right.
And
Well, we learned differently, huh?
yes,
Oh my
yes.
goodness.
So that's really important because it ties into why HBCUs are important, because now when we look at how the distribution of resources and funds are presented, historical black colleges and universities are underfunded currently.
Right.
And if we look at what HBCUs are designed and mission to do, there are institutions of access. A large majority of historical black colleges and university students are coming from underserved communities.
Right.
They are locked out of some of these larger
Right.
Division I institutions. So when you're talking about why they are important, HBCUs are institutions of access. So they give people who aren't afforded the opportunity to go to some of the traditional white institutions that have the big building, a lot of the great funds, and they are established as research institutions. So when you look at what HBCUs are doing, they fill in a void. So when we cannot
Still today, they
still
still
today,
Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Isn't that sad state of reality?
yes, and you look at what are the byproducts.
Yeah, even though it's a sad state of reality, I think it's great when you, like you said, you went to a HBCU and you found, wow, they're all the same color, but they're all different.
Yes.
You know, you get a much better sense of your whole culture. It's like the kind of stereotypes
Yes.
are
right.
just broken.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why HBCUs matter, because they help to alleviate some of the stereotypical barriers and the stereotypes that we are accustomed to seeing. You don't see that everybody's not the same, and sometimes even with the media helps to depict, and you learn that, hey, there's more than one type of people there.
Yeah.
HBCUs they open access and innovate, and we need to start on that.
Well, I want to you answer the same question about the future of the HBCUs, but I want to put in this context. At the rally you guys organized, which you did a fantastic job. I mean,
Thanks.
there were busloads of young African Americans from 3 out of 4. I don't think Eastern Shore was there.
Yeah, 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4 of the black universities, historically black universities, and it was just great to see the enthusiasm. They poured out of the buses. They were it was just, I loved it. He did a good job. One of the trainers, what's his name?
Fidel.
Fidel.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went to an HBCU. You remember what he said?
Yeah.
He said that you're black. What's going on? You know, it's like that. And then he said he keep using this word HBCU. You know what it meant? It was like LOL or something. He called his buddy up and asked him, "What's HBCU?" Now, what's that to you? Even about in the black culture. I mean, the white culture. I'm sure it's even high percentages. What the hell, an HBCU?
Right.
But I was surprised to hear that, and I love being there.
Right.
He's a very talented guy.
Quantoni Fidel.
Fidel. He is someone, if you want to have a smart social justice advocate
Yes.
who also entertains.
Yeah.
Yes. An entrepreneur, Quantoni Fidel is discerning.
Quantoni
He has a
Fidel.
book out as well called
He's a very
The
talented-
Rise of the Black Voice that isn't always receptive to those that do not want to know or not unconsciously not knowing that they're not listening to us as well, but also what we have to go through and within our own communities, within
Yes.
our own self as people.
Nice.
It's the resources, the programming, the initiatives, and the ideas out there. It's the fact of being exposed to those opportunities is what creates that disparity, or needs to become the void to fill that void, that gap filler. The fact is, I myself didn't know much about historically black colleges or universities.
So we've been discussing a lot of your experiences in the HBCUs you went to. I want to discuss one more thing before we get into this conflict,
Okay.
the litigation thing. You took the path in Morgan of going into student government.
Yes.
Why and what was that like?
I went into Morgan knowing that I wanted to build and mold and build a craft within myself, personal leadership, student leadership experiences and knowledge and expertise. I was a past former U.S. congressional page for the United States House of Representatives, leaving high school, going into my freshman year at Morgan. So I was exposed to the federal government,
and that still meant you want to get involved?
Yes. So it was actually that life experience, actually seeing our elected officials, our national leaders pass legislation and policies that have implications on the entire nation that inspired me, because I never was exposed to such. So once I went to Morgan, I wanted to always model myself and my leadership behind those that I've learned from personally. So I started to read certain books and on certain elected officials, past presidents, state congressmen, and things of that sort. And what I learned was all of them had some similar tracks as far as life and development and career development and purposes, in that they initially all held leadership positions on their campuses. So if I wanted to aspire to get somewhere, why not mold myself behind people that have already fulfilled those purposes? So I went to Morgan, and that leadership came out of me when another administrator or staff person saw something. She saw that I had much insight. I had a fire within me to always voice myself for something that was fair and equitable. I thought that the student voice wasn't being heard. And she honed me in to go into becoming a leader and a vice president of the Greek organizations on campus. And then she said that I did so exceptionally well that student government leadership were looking at me. So they offered me a position as a chief of staff to learn about the student government, get hands-on experience. And then by my senior year, I was offered to serve as vice president of the student government. And that changed my life there. It exposed me to who I was as a person, as a natural leader, but also how local government can then work, how you can also learn and gain these expertise to then use those as you matriculate from school. So a lot of the experiences that I learned of organizing, voicing myself, creating networks and social silos and things of that sort to push agendas and initiatives, I used those as, once I graduated from Morgan as an alum, to go back into communities as a community organizer, and then that led me to become youth commissioner of Baltimore City as well, and then to run for office for district council, the city council in the past year. So all of that is what I gained at Morgan, and that's why HBCUs matter, because they give us these experiences to learn who we are, but to also expose us to who we can become later on in that future.
Very beautiful, very beautiful. So we've talked a lot about you guys. Let's now get into the issue. After all this time, we've probably spent a whole show on your personal lives, but let's get into the issue now. DeJuan, why don't you start with describing what the conflict is between the 4 HBCUs and the state of Maryland?
Okay, great. In 2013, within the federal district court, Judge Blake has found that the Maryland Higher Education Commission is in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, Phase 6, and Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act of 1965. And that's a really important piece. Yeah. And what it's saying is that they have found out that the Maryland Education Commission has in fact been historically discriminating against historical black colleges and universities, and to the point where they are more segregated and discriminatory than Mississippi, the state of Mississippi. So what we're saying is that Maryland Education Commission did not make the proper amendments to the Brown versus Board of Education, and that's really important. So they failed to desegregate the Higher Education Commission. Maryland never did that. So where we're at right now, we're not arguing if the state is in the wrong. Right now, the current lawsuit phase is, how do we fix it? Because in 2013, the judge ruled in the favor of the plaintiffs, which is the coalition for HBCUs. And Maryland Education Commission said, okay, you got us. We're in violation. We're going to make some promises to remedy the situation. However, the state never delivered on that promise. Some of the things that they were doing, I must admit, they did stop this. And it was one program where Towson University duplicated a program that was at Morgan. And a lot of people do not know that this is real significant. And the reason that this is real significant, because within the university system, universities do not supposed to compete with high demand niche programs. And that's because the reason being because these programs are part of an institution where they're both this product under one umbrella. And if you duplicate that product, they're in competition with each other. Right. Therefore, they would drive down the profit margin for that business. So what happened, University of Towson University duplicated a Morgan program, and where the Morgan program had resources and a white population already attending there because it was a high demand program. So what the state did allow to create a white program of the black version of the program. So it was a white versus black program, and they invested more in South Towson than in the Morgan program.
You know what's interesting about that? That creates resegregation. Because what happens when it's called unnecessary duplication.
Yes.
Duplicating programs without an educational reason for doing so. And so he essentially is taking a Morgan program that was successful and stealing it.
Yes.
And letting Towson steal it. And then not only letting Towson steal it, but funding it. Better than the Morgan program.
Right.
Yes.
And so what that results in is Morgan losing white students and even losing black students. And Morgan getting weaker.
In addition, Morgan losing faculty.
Faculty,
Staff
yes,
as well.
yes.
That's another
That's
part
a
of the
good
equation
point.
that's never talked about.
That's a good point.
Because now these, based off of credibility, accolades, and things that look good on paper as far as high-end professionals, especially in the education field, one school off of paper or off of name recognition may gain more leverage or accessibility to something over another one.
Right.
So a faculty or staff in themselves may relocate, may also defund the program or stop the program itself and send it to another campus or institution, which then has implications on our student to staff ratio.
Right.
Which is another part of the
Right.
lawsuit
Good
that's
point.
also
Good
been
point.
part of the lawsuit since 1989 as well.
That's a good point.
So we have to be cautious of the defunding of our schools, the unnecessary duplication, and also the staff to student ratio. That has to have certain criterions based off of us being a state institution in itself and being of a public entity.
Now this lawsuit is longer than 2013.
Yes.
2013 was the resolution.
Yes.
The lawsuit was actually filed in 2006, but that's just not even the beginning. This goes back, into the 1970s.
1969. And
Yeah.
we're in the Office of Civil Rights on the
That's
federal,
right.
The federal government themselves sued the Maryland Higher Education
That's
for
right.
visual
That's
segregation
right.
and policies, and were found guilty through their own observations.
The federal government found Maryland guilty.
Yes, of
Back in
visual segregation.
69, 70s.
69, 70s of finding visual segregation. That's what racism within policy and legislation.
Right.
So they were found guilty in 1969, as well as been again in 1989. These cases then resurfaced again in 1993. So these cases have outlived me and DeJuan's own existence.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Isn't that
It
crazy?
says if at this point, if you already been found guilty in the state of Maryland already acknowledged the fact that they have been found guilty of unnecessary duplication and practicing racism and segregation, why are we now in the second remedial phase or clause of this case?
And what's even worse, also makes it even lengthier. You mentioned that after the decision in 2013, the judge did not decide how to solve the problem.
Right.
She left it to the parties
Right.
to discuss it.
That's when it gets
And then they waited, how long? It took 2 years or something?
2 years.
Before the state came up with even its first proposal.
Right. And that's an interesting point because even when the state finally, after 2 years, came up with a proposal how to remedy the situation, the state had lawyers present this proposal. They did not consult with any HBCU university president, not even the commission. So how can you propose a set of solutions and do not consult with either one of the parties that which you're providing solutions for? So some of the solutions didn't make sense. You're telling 4 institutions who have been discriminated against and they lost over about, if we give a dollar amount, $3 billion since 1970, centered around this discriminatory practice.
Wait. What's the $3 billion figure?
The $3 billion figure is about the allocation of resources that these universities have lost.
Yeah, I looked at some of the ratios. It was like 100 to 1 ratios of money going to the predominantly white schools compared to the HBCUs.
Right, and so what the state proposed in their first set of solutions was, okay, you got us. We're going to give all 4 of the institutions $3 million over a course of 5 years
Oh my
to
gosh.
divvy up between you guys and
Oh,
start
man.
a high school to college summer program.
They didn't say after they said that. Just joking. No, that's not the real.
Not at all.
They were serious.
They were serious.
It's like so out of line.
Right.
Yes.
And so
It's an insult.
Yes, and even down to the federal judge, she felt that it was an insult. She's like, so now you're back in front of me. The proposal that you proposed did not make sense. It was disrespectful. So that's why we're back inside the court. Well, we were in the courtroom this year on the remedies, and we heard testimonials from both sides of the party and what type of remedies should we seek.
And that wrapped up about, what, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, February the 22nd.
So the judge is really considering this now. It's a hard one to solve
Yes.
Yes.
in her shoes. I mean, I'm glad she made the ruling in 2013. I hope she takes the remedy seriously. But you're talking about $3 billion basically in losses.
Mm-hmm.
How, what do you see? What do you see?
Wow.
That's
I
a
think
tough one.
It's one of those stalemate, those chess moves where you just stale out the opponent and wait for them to lose their 3 steps ahead king move and things of that sort. But the thing is, if it's generations after generation of high-end collegiate students at historically black colleges that experiences the same thing that their grandparents experienced,
Right.
same thing that their parents experienced, and the same thing now the grandchildren are experiencing.
Wow.
This becomes
It's
part
mind-boggling.
of the discussion at the dinner table when we go back
Exactly.
home
Oh
on
my
holiday
gosh.
weekends to say, Grandma, I remember when you were fighting for this case and this cause back then.
Oh my
I'm now
gosh.
picking up this same match to try to push forward towards justice. So it has not been ignored on our end
Right.
because we're often on the lower end of the ladder of being the victims of something that we shouldn't even have to been victimized for in the first place.
Right.
The only thing is that we need the state of Maryland they already accepted their fault. Now let's correct it. And it's as simple as that. And it can go towards the monetary and the allocation of funding. And that's what the Senate bill is doing, and that's what the House bill did of House Bill 879. These bills was already proposed in 2016 with litigations and remedy clauses that can show the allocation of funding that should have went through certain
And I remember the
schools.
judge saying something at some point, I can't remember what it was, about the only way, that money is not the only way to solve this.
Yes.
Yeah.
That there are other solutions as well.
Right. But
What's she talking about there?
I think it's twofold, and DeJuan can float on this as well. I think I don't want our discussion to get away from the money in itself.
No, yeah, the money's
because the
important,
funding can
yeah.
be the largest one, but it's also money outside of just capital projects that can go towards the schools. Reinvestment as far as creating an operational budget to bring in the faculty and the staff.
Can they
that
force those programs back into the black universities?
Well, that's one of the.
That to me would be,
Yeah.
that's a big one.
Right. So that's
Because with that comes the money too.
Right.
You get the program, then you get the faculty, you get the money, the students, it all flows.
Right.
If you move that program back. And that's what's interesting about how they allowed the duplication. Because in other states where they've had these problems of desegregating colleges, it's ending the duplication.
Yes.
Right.
That's the technique.
Right.
And Maryland was doing the opposite.
Right.
So, what do you see?
So that's the point the judge was trying to make. Now, throwing money, we all can agree, throwing money at a problem don't solve the problem. Do not solve the problem. So she was bringing up the ending the unnecessary duplication of programs, because that is a structural system problem.
Right.
Because if I go ahead and
Right.
start allocating more resources to those institutions, this do not solve the problem.
Right.
It was unnecessary duplication of the program, but then we also create high demand niche programs, and that will bring those resources, the student populations, back inside these institutions and begin to allow the historical black college and university to be at a pace of being compatible. And now we're talking about, it's going to take some time for these institutions to reach the compatibility of the other institutions, but that's how you do it beyond just the resources, but the structural, into the duplication of programs, creating high demand niche programs, and for the listeners, when we're talking about creating high demand niche programs, we're talking about at Morgan State University, they're known for their engineering program.
Right, exactly.
Down at University of Maryland East Shore, they're known for their aviation and marine biology program. At Bowie State University, they're known for the cybersecurity program.
Right.
In Coppin, you have the social sciences. So allowing these programs to be the high demand niche programs will help to attract the top talent
Right.
for our students. They allow to attract the top talent for us faculty, the top talent when you talk about researchers. And then the funding will also support that. So that is a real important piece right there, and I'm glad that the judge brought up that point, because it's not just about the money, but the money is one of the key things, but we have to focus in.
No, she's taking this very seriously.
Yes.
I'm impressed with so far what I've seen. I hope that I stay impressed.
Yes.
You wanted to add more about money and why that's an important factor in addition to ending the duplication.
Right. The fact was that I wanted to key in on was the money in itself. The duplication of the program will eventually, in all due right, will have to eventually be grandfather claused out of the traditionally and predominantly white institutions. That these programs that are students that are currently in there will give them the opportunity to graduate from their schools and their institutions that are now housed at these predominantly white institutions, PWIs and TWIs, but after this graduating class to completely shut and disclose of the program and resend these students back, not excluding them from having the accessibility to earn these degrees within these certain niche programs, but to send them to the historically black colleges and universities, because we have to create that competitive, we have to create this equal playing field. And to make these schools competitive amongst each other, rather than having one of a higher end and one of a lower end of creating superiority or inferiority, we have to be mindful that we can offer these same programs to other traditionally white students, foreign exchange students as well, that they can get the same level of education, the same successfulness and efficiency of these programs at our HBCUs, in which we have been offering, which already shows that they're very successful. The data shows in itself when you're going to the courts and you're hearing about the graduation rates, the millions of foreign exchange students coming into our historically black colleges, that they are earning a degree that allows them to be civilly engaged citizens. Mm-hmm. So what we need to make sure and definitely voice our opinion of is that the funding has to be there. And without the funding there, that you're just jumping over and you're giving us tadpoles to reach to the other end of the water there, but it's going to eventually sink if we don't have sustainability behind it. Right. And that sustainability has to come through certain funding allocations that are written into law. You can't make these different clauses without actually putting them into law and actually holding these entities accountable for making sure they're enacted.
I remember when the University of Baltimore.
Great point.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to say?
I'm gonna
Let's see. I want to see if you got it right.
Well, University of Baltimore was a private university at first in 1970,
yes.
And it was failing in 1970.
Right.
Which, when we're talking about private institutions, they were outside of the university system.
Exactly.
So the state was not responsible for the sustainability and operation of University of Baltimore, but what the state made a drastic turn was to absorb the substantial costs of the failing institution of the University of Baltimore, bringing it inside the university system at a cost to the other institutions who were already existing inside Baltimore, which is more than they happened.
Right.
So when that happened, it took a lot of the resources and money from Coppin State University and Coppin State University and Morgan State University, and drive it to University of Baltimore. But the thing, they knew that would happen. It would drive resources from the two current institutions. So what they said was, University of Baltimore could not attract the freshman and sophomore year students. They could not attract that, so they won't be in competition with that. Now, recently, they were allowed to attract freshman and sophomore. So University of Baltimore was established once the state absorbed University of Baltimore. They told them they could not compete with the already existing universities in Baltimore, and as a remedy to it, it's like, don't compete with them, don't accept traditional students. So University of Baltimore accept that, say we're not going to do that. And now recently they decided that, okay, we will accept and recruit traditional students. So now those Baltimore institutions are at another loss of resources and recruitment of talent.
And who's the president of the University of Baltimore?
The president right now is former Baltimore Mayor Kirk Smoke.
And he testified against the HBCUs in this litigation.
Yes, he did. Former Baltimore Mayor Kirk Smoke, which is the current university president at University of Baltimore, and it's very interesting. Brought up that point about his testimonials that happened with all the other university presidents as well. And what happened was that you learned while sitting in the courtroom that these university presidents are advocating to sustain the status quo. So you're saying that we need to keep this Jim Crow-like system the same. And I sat there and heard some of, one university president particularly, UMBC's president, said that his university may not survive if we was to dismantle the current system. So that's equivalent to saying that when we were in the time of slavery and the Southern economy said that they cannot abolish slavery because their economy will not survive anymore.
We need those slaves.
We need those slaves. And as you see today, the South still survived. So it was like,
of course.
And now we're going into...
Of course they'll survive.
Right.
If the state wants them to survive, they can make them survive. Now, the impact when you have a university that's underfunded, like Coppin, that's in West Side Baltimore.
Yes.
And if that's underfunded and doesn't grow and doesn't thrive, what does that do to that community? You know, we talked about the White L before.
Yeah.
It does. I think it does a lot, and it says a lot. I think Baltimore is. Let's say if our schools.
And the West Side, by the way, is where the Freddie Gray.
Just only a few blocks away from.
That's right. Just very close to that.
Well,
That's all to give people a sense.
Living in a utopian world, and you have two historically black colleges, both housed in the inner city of Baltimore, and if they were functioning at its ultimate high capacity that we know that they could, can you imagine the trajectory and the fulfillment and the investment that will go into those neighboring surrounding communities? But the fact is, if you dilute and you defund and you disvalue an institution that's supposed to create exposure to a better world, because education is the passport to freedom, correct? If we live through that and we devalue these institutions, we're ultimately devaluing the communities that they stay within, because now they doesn't have the resources, the community outreach efforts and strategies to go into the community to provide exposure to a young man or a young woman that wants to go into school. And this is why we often find that our students don't know about these institutions or don't value them. It's because they aren't given these institutions themselves on the front end, aren't given the funding, the programming, the allocation, and everything else to do its maximum effort to go back into those students.
Well, just
we're
think
just
about
feeding off a little to survive off of nothing.
Exactly. Just think about, there are whole towns built around a college. College town.
Right.
We've heard of those college towns, right? And so when you take the funding out of the college, the university, which is basically an anchor institution.
Yes. And if I could add to that, you brought up a great point about establishing college towns. You mentioned the White L.
Yeah. Describe that to people who don't know.
Okay. The White L in Baltimore, if you look at the map of Baltimore, there's an L that goes through central Baltimore and across the Inner Harbor down to Canton and Federal Hill. So it resembles an L. And outside of that white L is a cluster. There's two clusters on West Baltimore and East Baltimore. And that is referred to as the black butterfly. The black butterfly. So within the white L, that's where a lot of the city's resource dollars goes to develop the neighborhoods, communities, and institutions within the white L.
Like University of Baltimore's in there?
Great, right. So if you look at and compare the two, so with that context, the white L resembles the traditional white institutions at the Maryland level. The black butterfly resembles the historical black college and university. So if at the city level, the white L is constantly receiving the city resources you build up. And the University of Baltimore just so happens to be within the white L, and look around the Mount Vernon area. Constant development. The train station is right there. Station North. these things in these neighborhoods are constantly receiving all the funds. And the key thing is it helped to stabilize that community.
That's right.
You see that community is stabilized. You see the property tax. You see how clean the neighborhoods are. Now let's go ahead and travel outside of
Let's go to Coppin. Yeah.
Let's go to Coppin. And that is the North Avenue, close to, they call it ground zero for the Freddie Gray Baltimore City uprising.
It was great. That was right near the uprising.
Right.
That's where it began, yeah.
And you see that there was a disinvestment of the neighborhood as well as Coppin State University. How Coppin State University is not seen as an anchor institution in West Baltimore?
Exactly.
Similar to Morgan State University on the east side.
Exactly.
We don't see Morgan State being an anchor institution receiving the funds as an anchor institution as we see University of Baltimore. So these are the type
And of course, it's Johns Hopkins.
Yes.
Now, that's a private.
Yeah.
But that is the Baltimore machine.
Yeah. So to use that white L in the black butterfly context, we have to ask ourselves, as well as the policymakers and people, where do they stand? Do we want to continue to invest resources and policies in a segregated system? We all can agree, and we see visually every day how segregated Baltimore is.
Right.
So why should we continue to perpetuate such a
Exactly.
segregated system?
Exactly.
And that's one of the questions I always will ask people: where do you stand?
That's why I don't understand this. The fight. Well, I understand it. I understand racism, but from an economic and development perspective, from a high quality education perspective, rather than fighting this, Maryland should be facing up to it.
Right.
And if they face up to it and they start to invest in Morgan and Coppin, the other two as well, but just thinking of Baltimore now, you're not only investing in those schools, you're investing in those college towns,
Yeah.
which means all sorts of resources, all sorts of housing, all sorts of retail, all sorts of activity.
Yes.
And so to me, and you have a desegregated college system. You create a better education system,
Right. And
for everybody.
Yeah.
and if we move
So it makes no
past that-
sense.
Right. And you'll see that we were able to move past this black and white issue and separate, divide the city. And when we unify the city, we're allowed to attract outside talent,
Exactly.
outside dollars. One thing Baltimore is facing right now is the decline in residents and maintaining millennials. Once they go to the colleges
That's
here in
right.
Baltimore,
That's
within
right.
6 months they leave.
Yeah.
So it's like, what can we do to maintain and retain some of the top talent?
And what's so great about one of the things that's so great about the HBCUs is really the spirit.
Yes.
Obviously at your event, you can see. We went down. Margaret Flowers, who ran for U.S. Senate here and who's handling our camera. She does all sorts of things as a senator, right? We went down to a couple times to speak, and the kids who came in were such good quality. They were so into it, so on top of it, so wanting it. I just see such potential that's not being realized.
Yes, certainly. Wow, what are we in now? We're watching the NCAA tournaments. And we were just having a conversation with some of my friends, and we talked about if you watch how things are systematically put in place, they often find some way somehow to disinvest, use some type of practices to find a way to disinvest the institutions and the communities itself. Like I was saying, most of our athletes aspire to go to a D1 school in hopes that it creates a greater possibility of getting drafted to professional leagues. With that, with the integration and things of that sort, our athletes and our entertainers and everyone else who can accumulate such great wealth and popularity eventually goes towards TWIs and PWIs in hopes to eventually...
TWIs, can you define those?
Traditionally white institutions and predominantly white institutions that are often the African American student is a very massive, the little minority.
Right.
But we were saying if most of our schools and institutions outside of foundation funding, alumni givebacks, and things of that sort, most institutions thrive off their athletic departments. They fund majority of all academia within their schools. So if we look at these universities that have college towns, Georgetown, College Park, anyone that you might want to think of, Duke, Carolina, and things of these sorts, these schools thrive off their athletic departments, would then funnel that money towards their academia.
Right.
At an HBCU, what we find is that black talented athletes go towards other institutions, which means that revenue from packed stadiums, from packed game nights, rivalry games, that is not there anymore. We have diluted our sports games, which then creates a tier of disinvestment into our educational systems.
Mm-hmm.
So what we come to realize is this as well. In order to create revenue and sustainability, we also have to rebring everything that can work as a factor towards our sustainability. So now we have to attract these athletes to see the value in coming to a historically black college, to increase sale tickets, athletic department sale ticket, game nights, rivalry games, paraphernalia, alumni reception, and that all plays off of the sports. And that sports in itself, high-end sports competitiveness, brings pride and spirit. We already, as HBCUs, through our communities, as we are as evolving as a people, we're very high-end spirited, high-end energy people. Yeah. We're very family-oriented. We have this this mindset that's naturally to us to come together rather than be divisive.
That's very true. I see.
That's what is not often portrayed, but we're very home and see as oneness. So if we can do this, and we already have these, we need to funnel and have these other outside factors to play into the spirits. Because then we can have alumni who remember state game that went into double overtime that took us to the top final game.
And then they give money.
Then they give back. If we go through an institution, because we've been defunded and devalued through years and years of generations
of racism,
we lose that sense of pride.
Exactly.
Of thinking that it's far too little, too late, or that the other end, the opponents, that the state themselves will never see the value in us.
Right.
So that makes us even face another social barrier that we have to face within our own home.
Wow.
And I think that's unfair, that's unjust, but knowingly, and seeing that this case has been open since 1969, I think that the state of Maryland knows this as fact.
Of course.
What they're doing.
But no, it's a fact.
But then it has to
everyone who's looked at it, whether it's the federal government or a court, has always ruled against them.
Right.
Time to face reality and fix it.
Right.
So what? Were you going to say something about the communities and how the colleges can affect? Or did he steal your thunder?
No. Well, the point I was making, to try to help us to move to some of the people who never attend college, period, or never attend an HBCU, and realize the value of solving this issue. And then moving this beyond the racial tone that we are accustomed to hearing about. How does making the amendments to this problem benefits us all? So if we was to focus on Baltimore, if we was to increase the residents and maintain the residents that we do have, we'll see an increase in our local economy.
Exactly.
And our local economy will grow, and then that will result in a lower tax base. That will increase the tax base and lower the tax cost
per person.
Yeah.
So you have a bigger tax base, you can tax less.
Right.
Yeah.
And see,
and that's one of the big problems.
Yes.
Because Baltimore's got one of the highest tax rates.
Yes.
Compared to the surrounding.
Right.
And that's because they're losing population.
Population. So, and how you increase the tax base is home ownership. But if we have a high vacant home and building ratio, and we have the decay on the West Baltimore and the East Baltimore, people are not attracted to those neighborhoods. There isn't an anchor institution. So let's go ahead and demand the proper remedies to solve this issue and make Baltimore a real unified, great city. And that's what needs to happen. And you will begin to start seeing the city thrive as it once were.
And you'll have these universities with great people like you, and others at the HBCUs becoming mentors, going to the nearby high school. I mean, just like it just propels itself.
Right.
All right. So we've talked about the court. We're waiting on the judge. What do we need to see from the Capitol, Annapolis? Where do we? What's the next steps there? What are the issues that you're focused on there?
So we're focusing on a bill that was introduced by Senator John Carter Conway. This bill is a bill that was previously introduced, and you see that it failed. So now we're back into it, introducing this bill. She introduced it on February the 7th, or February 3rd, 2017, this year. Senate Bill 712 is now at the Taxation and Budget Committee, and it has to move through that. So on March the 7th at 1 p.m., within the Senate building, there will be a hearing on the Senate Bill 712. And what the Senate Bill 712 is demanding for HBCU programs to be compatible with the other institutions within the system.
Oh, so it deals with duplication.
Yes, it deals with duplication, and it creates accountability within the historical Black College University. So a lot of people always think of the financial cost and feels like there's no accountability or management of those funds. So the bill actually addressed those issues, and it has a lot of key points where you not only you have the resources being there, the accountability being there, and an earmark of percentage of the money. Because if we was to set a bill where it gives money to historical Black college universities, right? Well, it don't really. I'm watching the language, not necessarily giving the money, but appropriating the right percentage of resources to these institutions. But if we just have it earmarked at a particular number right now, we know that inflation happens.
Yeah.
So years down the road,
It won't make sense.
So with this bill, is a formula being in place. So on March,
So it creates a formula
it creates a formula
based on.
The distribution of resources to the other institutions.
Okay.
As well.
Yeah.
Getting a fair ratio.
And
Getting
the
a
higher
fair-
education price index, as well as demanded 5% of the governor's operating funding budget to Maryland higher education institutions.
Okay.
Yes.
That's part of all of the formulas in itself. I believe it's a 3-tier formula.
Yeah. So when you ask about what are we doing the next phase, down in Annapolis legislation, it's March the 7th, the hearing bill for 712.
Yeah.
We're asking that the supporters, if you are in support of ending the duplication and dismantling this Jim Crow-like education system, support and call your legislators. Call the state legislators, call the delegates in the Senate, especially the Senate representatives who are going to hear this bill on March the 7th at 1 p.m. See where they stand. There's also HBCU night down in Annapolis on March the 21st, and that goes on from 6 to 8, and we'll have live broadcasts happening down there. So it's really important that we attack this thing at a twofold. In the courtroom where we already have one, now we're seeking remedy, but also now at the legislative level. And without policy, things will die quickly.
And so, what do you see? I mean, are you going to be doing organizing to get people down to the 7th and the 21st?
Yes. So just as we've done in the past, the recent past with the HBCU rally, is the
Now you've had a great success. You can have a greater success.
Right. And that was one of our immediate first goals, is to get that low hanging fruit of engaging the undergraduate students, to bring them aware of the case, because we know that no national news, very seldom, little to no local news have been covering this.
That's right.
The staff, the administration, and the faculty, based off the bureaucracy of the case, if you want against the state in themselves, and it being a state institution, they have no leeway to speak to the case to the students on the college campus because of so much bureaucracy. So the students, without having people or stakeholders or advocates such as DeJuan and myself, they have little to no way of gaining this information. So it's to go back.
The lack of education on this. It's terrible.
It's disgusting. It's
It's
very
amazing.
disheartening, and it's very unpleasant.
It's such an important case for education,
Right.
for racism, for
the
community
Can you
development.
imagine going out of the Black History Month and telling students, "Hey, do you know the
Black History Month.
The Brown versus Board of Education case is still living,
Exactly.
and you're now the students that are going to be a part of this
Isn't that
national
crazy?
historic case."
Isn't that
And we've been
crazy?
studying, and they just finished closing out a book that talk about the Brown versus Board,
Right.
and to now flip over and see your name.
It's
as part of
happening
that,
now.
and you're like, "Wow, I'm still part of this same history that I'm supposed to be learning about as
The
the
same
past,
struggle.
but still living in the present."
The same
So
struggle.
we're doing that. We're engaging the students. Going to the college campuses, reaching out to the alum, reaching out to local organizations that are supposed to be for the betterment of the community, be for the betterment of Black people, and be for the betterment of having a better tomorrow. So actually charging everyone who creates a purpose and a stand to live up to that.
Yeah.
And that's for everyone. Everyone has to be a stakeholder to this, because if we're seeing nationally, it's a systemic war against public education. And it's just from lower
It
grades
is.
to
It
all
is.
the way
It
to
is.
higher education. And
You're so right
This
about
has
that.
to be addressed. That if
does.
you take away one tier, how can someone climb to the ladder?
Yes.
How can they climb upper? So we got to make sure both the foundation and those the matriculation and accessibility to further education is all aligned to one.
Yeah.
Because if we have this investment in our public education systems from early child care to high school readiness to college and career readiness. Why should college and career readiness exist when there's no college and career there for us to be admitted into?
Public education is under attack.
It's completely under attack.
And it's been under attack since Bill Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
It's been going on with every administration, the Bush, Obama, and now Trump, DeVos. It's a constant attack. And
Yes.
we really, and they use tricks.
Right.
They love the word choice.
Right.
So they can give you vouchers and you can go pay for, some extreme religious school, or you can, not get a quality education, but you pay for it and you get to choose it,
Right. And that speaks on the privatization of education is once again another trick.
Yeah.
Because this is where business come into place. If you talk about choice, then you allow some of your business partners or friends to increase their bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
If they take money out of the public funds to line their pocket, that's how you do it.
Right.
So when we hear people talking about the attack on public education and privatization of education, that's really speaking to a piece of, hey, how can my business friends profit off the government money to create another business model? So now, like we're going through within the state of the governor's plan to increase charter schools failed because now it's pro business and it's coming out of it. And now we're looking at it's like it's not about the students having choice.
Yeah.
What they're going to. It's about the bottom line of the
It's
dollar.
serving the corporation.
Yeah.
So I just want to do a couple more things, and then we got to wrap up. One, is there a House bill? Any talk of a House bill?
Not yet.
In the past, there was a House Bill 7112 and House Bill 879 that existed prior to this one.
So we got to get a House bill.
Yes. Cross-following is very important.
We got to get a House bill, and so we have to find a sponsor for that, some co-sponsors, because you need to have them both houses.
Yeah.
And then we got to deal with the governor.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, then the other question is the question of appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any sense of whether the government is going to keep this litigation that's been going on forever, 3 generations you guys have talked about, where this legislation, any chance they're going to face the music and solve this problem, or are they going to keep on appealing and add another more 10 years?
I think that...
and people can do something about that too.
Yes. That's what the point I was ready to make. That decision will come down to public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Where do the public stand? Going into the next election cycle, this governor will be challenged.
Yes.
But if the people do not put pressure on ending this Jim Crow-like system at higher education, the governor may say, let's go ahead and go on appeal, and the appeal will go beyond election day.
Right.
So he don't have to worry about it. But if the pressure from everybody, including the people who are currently listening, apply the pressure to say, let's end this now. The governor will make this one of his top issues as well. And I can almost guarantee you that this issue will not just stop here. The Democratic candidate will have to address where did the governor stand on this issue. It's going to be
Well, I hope the Democrat will stand on this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's up to us. If it is to be, it's up to the we.
There's no Democrat disagreeing doing it, because someone has got to make this an issue.
You know what I mean. Somebody has to make this issue, not to be non-partisan. Someone has to stand up and make this an issue.
Right.
And as you guys have already made a public stand on a statement on it, which is one of the first ones.
And thank you much.
So that's really important that we continue to push it.
Trying to show what the hell they should be doing.
Right. You're showing. It's not you're trying. It's not you're showing. It's like now we got to get this information out to the people and see that the Green Party stands on this issue of ending this system, this discriminatory system, and now that's what we have.
I haven't convinced Margaret to run for governor yet, though, so we got to push her.
Yes. She's on it.
But we have to have a strong position on that, and we have to push the two parties. I'm not confident the Democrats are going to do the right thing. They haven't done the right thing
thus far
since the 70s.
Yes.
So I don't know what's going to change to make that stripe change, but they need to This is an issue that's so important on so many levels.
The thing is that it needs to be everyone needs to be mindful that the political genre, the political narrative is shifting across this country and the nation itself, and that you're now going into a new voting population of millennials.
Right.
And these lawsuits and these cases and policies are going to affect our generation much longer, so we're going to be the ones that have to answer to them.
We don't want another generation.
Right. The millennial generation
Oh,
has a
my
full
gosh.
advantage because we are that generation that's connected to the internet.
Exactly.
To
Exactly.
Widespread messaging and getting our voices heard.
Right.
That if it's not going to take years after years for us to bring stuff to the limelight anymore.
That's right.
It's only one click of a button, one repost,
That's right.
one blog, one share, piece by piece that can go nationally and globally. That if these new elected officials or supposedly should be public servants and not politicians, if they do not address to what's being yearned or what's being presented on the table to create sustainable solutions and being solution-oriented individuals, that they will have to face to this new generation of people.
Right.
And you started to see that shift from the executive level to the local to the state levels, and in the last primary for the president and themselves. That it's a whole nother voting population that can change swiftly what their narrative and their wants are. And we have to be mindful of that.
That's a power we have.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, and then in the state of Maryland, we look at the numbers. More and more people are going independent. They're not subjecting themselves to the failed two-party system right now.
They got the two parties have to earn it.
Yes.
It's not a given. Not given.
Not anymore.
And that's where.
And you're seeing a lot of in the African American community, people staying home.
Yes.
They're just not interested in what's being offered.
Right. So it's up now. Like the Green Party had already started. Now it's time to go even stronger. With the stance to show it how it's supposed to be done.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you guys working on this, and I'm impressed with the work you've done. That I've seen. I'm sure you've done more I haven't seen, but and you guys know this issue so well. I'm really impressed, and I hope that people will share their voices because this is a tool.
Yes.
The tape is a tool. The first place any movement starts is education.
Agree.
You got to get people to know what the issue is, and the media has not been covering this. And sometimes when they cover it lousy. And so now we covered it,
right?
And we're going to help everyone who sees this spreads it and builds the momentum needed to resolve this. You're in a strong position. You won in court recently. You'll get some kind of decision from this judge. You know, we're on the right side of justice, and it just is the right time for this. And so our hope is this is you guys are there for the final victory.
How can people follow this issue?
How can people follow this issue, I've been asked.
Well, on some of our personal pages, we're constantly advocating for this issue. One way you can follow this issue and be a support is on March the 7th, come out to the Senate bill hearing, March the 7th for the Senate Bill 712, the HBCU night down in Annapolis, March the 20th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. You can follow me on social media because I will continuously to talk about it. It's DeJuan Patterson on Facebook, and you'll see me posting inside of many of the groups across wherever to get this issue out. And that was one of the main channels of how we organized over 450 people to rally around the education of this issue. So continue to follow it. It will be out there if it is for us to collectively make sure that this issue stay on the forefront and demand media to pick up and cover this issue as well.
Agreed. To stay in the know of the case in itself is to stay on beat with the actual coalition team and themselves, with the HBCU coalition team. That's being housed by certain stakeholders and members, law officials, alumni. That's what that all came together collectively to create a coalition. To stay in forefront of them, the Afro newspaper is doing an exceptional job at creating stories and keeping everyone up to abreast of what's going on, as being one of the very seldom media outlets that should be covering this case. They're doing a great job at it, and I'm much appreciative of them as well. And just us being young millennials and community advocates of pushing this through our own personal networks on our own social media outlets. to follow us on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchats, and things that we do have, because we live stream. We posting articles, sharing email blasts, and things of that sort to educate the people, but also to move with organizational efforts and strategies. Myself is Rashad Staton, RASHADSTATON, and that's all of my social media handles as well. And you can contact us through email at my12feeds@gmail.com.
Matt, we'll add some more links to this video. So if you want to follow this issue and get involved, you can do it easily.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys very much, and thank you all for watching. Appreciate
Thank you.
everyone taking the time.
Thank you, great party. Thank you.